Everyone, welcome to Board Talks. Just while everyone's joining us, I'm just going to do a bit of an intro. Please, just as you're joining, keep yourselves on mute, or else everyone's going to hear your conversation you're having or what you're ordering for lunch. So yeah, this is a live recording and brought to you by Community Governance Aotearoa. This is our Board Talks Balancing the Books Finance 101, but as we know, finance, money matters, all those things, it's very tough. So this is very timely for us. Got a fantastic panel of guests from a range of organisations with us today, so that's going to be it's going to be a really great talk. So just a bit of housekeeping. Again, if you'd like to keep yourself on mute, that'd be fantastic. And if you've got any questions, please use the chat function, so you can find that on your screen. And we will do our best to get to the questions, or if you've got a specific question for our panelists, feel free to ask away. So this is your chance to ask questions that you want answers to, so make the most of it. The recording goes live out on our website, and we share it out to our database as well, post-event. And I hope you've enjoyed Finance Week. So Finance Week for Not-for-Profits, it's one of our flagship events that Community Governance have developed. So we've got Finance Week, and we've also got Policy Week, which will come up again in October. Finance Week for our not-for-profits was sponsored by BNZ and also Trust Management, and we have Greg and Rachael from these two great organisations, so thank you. So we had a great Finance Week that's sent a whole lot of articles and resources. You would have seen today a bit of a curation of all those resources. So I hope you enjoy those. It's a bit of video content and a bit of external resources and resources that Community Governance has also developed. Right, so I'll just share with you a bit about our sector. Just go to the next screen. So this is just important to share a bit about who our not-for-profit NGO sector is, just for those who might not be quite aware that we are our own community sector. We have over 115,000 not-for-profits here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We've got a huge amount of volunteers, those who give their time. Equally, those who serve on boards, we're not always paid, are we? So yes, we're also volunteers, but I feel like most of us say that we're more like workers, to be fair. We generate and provide a huge amount of revenue into New Zealand, and we also manage a lot of assets. So those can be from property portfolios, investments, reserves, that kind of thing. So we're a very substantial sector. So Board Talks, we developed this about 4 years ago. We've had over 4,000 plus. It's been growing and great to have you with us. If you've been with us before, you'll know the drill. So if you'd like, please pop in your name or where you're from, community organisation. We'd love to hear from you. You can do that now. And we've had a range of topics and they're all available on our website. Right. So if you'd like to say hello, it'd be neat to see who's with us on the call. You can do that in the chat. Well, first up, we've got Joshua from Dunedin Young Professionals. Kia ora. Shirley, got Stephen, got Debbie, Rachel, all around everywhere. Oh, that's fantastic. Kia ora, everyone. Thank you so much. So just as you're saying hi, so I'm just going to get to our panelists, and I can start with Jadene, who can introduce herself. We'll go in this order on my screen.
All right, thank you, Rose. So my name's Jadene Windley. I'm a director at Grant Thornton here in Wellington. I'm a CA and I work in the not-for-profit space generally, working with lots of not-for-profit organisations to help them with everything from outsourcing of finance functions when they don't need or have capacity for a full-time resource, through to general support, helping them specific projects, and the more compliance side of things, such as compiling their financial statements with them. So aside from my day job of advising and working with boards, I'm also a board member myself, recently appointed to the board of the Netball Wellington Centre.
Lovely. So some great not-for-profit experience. So over to Greg. Kia ora.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou Katoa everyone. Called Greg Bonnett toka ingoa. My name's Greg Bonnett and I'm based in Tamaki in Auckland. I'm Head of Professionals at BNZ. It's a sector that's really important to the bank because lawyers and accountants and other professionals provide lots of advice to our customers, including the not-for-profit sector. We're also building out our community and not-for-profit sector strategy for the bank and proposition. So we're doing lots of work in that, which I'm involved with, which I'm very pleased about. We've got a lofty ambition to make banking easier for the not-for-profit sector, and so that you can have more time to focus on the impactful work that your organisations do for the community. This mahi is really vital for our commitment to make a positive impact in our community as a bank as well. So it's a great area to work in within the bank, and we're building out that team nationally around that piece. I'm also lucky enough to be the chair of the New Zealand Music Commission and work with a fantastic board and team and the commission to support a thriving New Zealand music sector. And so, yeah, a very enjoyable role in that space. Thanks.
Kia ora. We appreciate the work that BNZ's putting into our sector, so well done. Thank you very much, and over to Rachael.
Kia ora koutou, ko Rachael McDonald toku ingoa. I'm the Chief Executive of Trust Management. I'm a lawyer by background, so not a finance professional, but certainly our organisation gets involved in all things finance. Trust Management is a specialist provider to the charitable sector. We have our origins in property management, but also asset management and investment funds, and also that wraparound board support, financial reporting, accounting services as well, all geared towards the charitable sector so that, as Greg says, you guys can concentrate on fulfilling your mission, and we sort of support you in the background by informing you of information, numbers, and a little bit of a strategic advice and a helping hand at the end of the day. Lots of similar challenges faced by multiple of our clients, and so like Greg, like Jadene, we're here to lend an ear and a support from an advisory perspective as well. So yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora, and we'll pop in your profiles and things into the chat so that you can check out our panelists. So thank you so much for everyone for joining. I'm really keen to hear the situation out there with your community groups and your board roles, and equally your challenges that you're facing. So we're going to kick off a bit about this, which is going to pose this to our panelists is what are they saying is the biggest financial challenges that our not-for-profits are currently facing? So yeah, it's a big one to start with, but I think it's important in a kind of general sense is what kind of impact do they think that they're saying out there? Who's going to be brave enough to answer this one first?
I'm happy to jump in if you like, Rose.
Awesome.
Look, the number one financial challenge at the moment is funding. There's just so much uncertainty as to funding sources, funding timing, multi-year funding. And then on top of that, we've got rising costs from a compliance perspective, from a community needs perspective. So, you know, and these things are not going away. They're getting more complicated, and board members and people involved in our organisations are expecting to move heaven and earth to figure this out. It is the number one thing, I think, on everybody's mind at the moment. And on top of that, you've got some bigger macro challenges. I mean that by big world challenges over the Pacific Ocean that are directly impacting on our funding streams, that cash flow, and the viability of our organisations as a result.
Yeah, so economic times is impacting and continue to, and yeah, so definitely hear what you're saying, Rachael. Is anyone else, Jadene, Greg, want to got some feedback?
I definitely had the same thoughts there as Rachael. The other items that I sort of had on my thinking were the world is changing so quickly, and a big challenge that has a financial impact for a lot of not-for-profits is the increase in cybersecurity risks and environmental risks. So the fallout of those can be really, really costly for not-for-profits. So it's important that they manage those risks, and insurance is a really key part of that as a first starter. The other piece I'd throw into the pot is, yeah, the general financial environment is really, really stressful, and it's very tough. And that having a good safety net for a not-for-profit, their reserves, it's continually challenging. Being able to have the safety net when you're not sure when the next funding stream will come in or the next payment makes things really tough. Lastly, I'd just throw in the taxation of charities piece, the consultation that's recently gone through with IRD, that could bring in some big challenges financially for not-for-profits, but unfortunately it's all a question mark at the moment because it's just a consultation document with a few questions thrown in. We don't know what the next steps may be. And that's all from me.
Awesome.
I think just on top of what Rachael and Jadene have said, we've certainly seen that with our customers in that space for incorporated societies. There's big changes coming in the next year for them in terms of the visiting their constitutions and re-enrolling under that entity type. That's an additional work that needs to be looked at. The cost of inflation having been high and higher interest rates, so that's changed to a reduction in the official cash rate recently over the last period of time, and that certainly reduced returns for people who have deposits. And I guess that impact of inflation has sort of eroded the purchasing power of cash in the bank as well. So things are costing more, and how you're looking at that part of it is really important for all organisations in the not-for-profit space, regardless of size, I think. And there's an impact, of course, with memberships and subscriptions and donations for some organisations because there is cost of living crisis, which is we're still working through, and uncertainty in the last few weeks around that globally hasn't really helped in that space. So there's a few challenges out there for organisations at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, so we're hearing it's economic, it's continuation of the cost of living crisis. And it's pretty much crunch time. It's been like that for quite some time, with especially affecting our community organisations. We've had quite a few charities close down, make decisions to close down. They've made decisions to maybe pull back on services because there's uncertainty to deliver. Generally, our not-for-profits, we're always, it's that kind of operating on the smell of an oily rag kind of thing. So we're always kind of under the pump, under-resourced, but demand is growing. So there's a big tension here when the community services that our organisations typically provide, they can be health, wellbeing, environment, out in the community. Yeah, the impact of growing demand is also causing a lot of tension. So Rachel, you talked about funding. But then if we, as a board member, our responsibilities are, yes, support our management and oversee our organisations, understand risk. But if we think about funding, and it's top of mind for many of our not-for-profits, what's some other things that we can consider? So breaking away from, we might not be getting any grants or funds in. What's some thoughts on this? And I know you explored a little bit in your article as well, just some other ideas.
Yeah, I think it's like it's stepping back, and everything is driven by your purpose and your mission ultimately. And so first of all, it's like, well, what is our purpose and our mission, and how do we do the best for ourselves to support that? Now, are you in it for the long term? Are you in it for the next 5 years only? And that then drives a lot of thinking and decision making as well. If your charity or for purpose organisation needs to be, living and breathing forever in order to deliver what you need to do, then you need to step back and think, well, how do we make what we're doing sustainable? and how much do we need to do that, and how are we going to achieve it? So it's really taking a step back and really analysing that from both a short-term and a long-term perspective to look at that sustainability. And so then it's looking, okay, well, how are we going to afford to do that? And look, it's really coming down to how you set up your financial management at the end of the day. So looking at your funding streams and then looking to strengthen your ability to fund your own self for the years to come. And so building up some reserves, thinking about some opportunities to create income streams from those reserves, like an investment in a even just a term deposit, if that was it, or an investment fund, or a property. There are different ways that you can create some certain income for yourself, as well as potentially grow an asset over the longer term. Lots of charitable organisations don't have that luxury. I get that, but I think it's really important that the board sits back and thinks about that longer term income generation and where that can possibly come from. Then it's about sort of setting up your financial management. And as a board member, it's really important that every single board member owns that knowledge and accountability around that financial management. I don't come from a finance background. I started off with looking at my bank balance transactions and going from there. There's a lot of lingo, there's a lot of terminology to get your head around, but community governance has got some fantastic resources online. Accounting firms have got lots of free information, free webinars. Your banking advisor is there every day to answer questions for free a lot of the time. And so just that good financial management also starts with understanding what you're trying to achieve and how to look at what you've got. I could go on for a lot more, but those are some of the sort of starting sort of things I'd be thinking about for just taking steps to strengthen your governance approach as a first step into finances.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure everyone's taking some notes on that, because a couple of things I pick up from that, Rachel, is that short term, long term. So that's some good thinking for us, is what can we do in the short term, whether that's how many, can we diversify our income? Can we create some other partnerships or opportunities? But also, what can we deliver in the short term? What can we deliver in the long term? That really is probably getting a very good plan in place around, do we have the staff? Do we have to rely on grants to have staff to deliver services? If not, then what decisions can you make? And that's kind of where we need to get to, rather than hoping that we're going to get the grant and then we don't, and there's many organisations actually missing out because they're very reliant on applications and funders. So yeah, so I like that kind of thinking around possibly having a really good discussion with the board to think about what can we achieve in the short term, and then what is our longer term and how we're going to get there. So
I'll just add on to that point there, Rose, about how there's been a semi-recent addition to the Charities Act, asking boards or governance groups to review the rules or the purpose of the organisation on a 3-year basis. So that's a really good starting point to have that thinking about your purpose and your planning for the next short to mid-term, and then tying that into your organization's annual planning and then the budgeting. So it's all a nice big circle.
Yeah, we've community governance, we feel quite a few queries about that actually around the governance if you're a charity, and we've got some resources on there. We've got a board evaluation tool, so if you didn't know, it's free on the website under the Good Governance Code, so you can share that with your board, fill it out, and better understand what your kind of priorities are. It's a really fantastic tool to make sure that you're doing really good governance practice and evaluation, and you can use that as part of the charity services review every 3 years as well. So just thinking around the board, and think about your organisations that you're serving, or you might be in the management and you're thinking, well, what kind of information do I need to give as well? What do we think about our skill set? What do we do if we've thinking that we've only got one accountancy type person, everyone else is not that confident, and we just take it for granted whatever information we're getting? We got some
Yeah,
Greg, would you like to share a bit?
Absolutely. And so I think a common strategy for boards is to appoint someone to look after the finances, and for that person to report back and be responsible for understanding and working with those finances and then explaining it to the rest of the board. I think a better model is where everyone takes that responsibility and everyone asks lots of questions. I think that skills matrix is really important, so people understand their levels at where they are in terms of comfort around finance and where their questions would like to come from. And I think understanding and listening to the management teams and what they're reporting against budgets is really important, so that you understand how you're tracking financially as well and can all contribute to it, because it's a shared exercise. You can have a financial trustee or you can have a subcommittee looking at it, but no matter what size of organisation it's kind of everyone's responsibility. And it's a really nice way of looking at it as well when there are changes on the board in terms of new board appointments. You can look at your skills matrix and see if there's gaps or there's other people that you want to add around that piece, just to include or help make those decisions based on that skills piece. So a really valuable exercise, both looking ahead and as an assessment on an annual basis of how your board's going. But I think it's a shared experience, and the more that you have a board that's all in together and all understand the financial position, the better you'll be able to manage it when there are less or there's less funds available, and you're looking at what initiatives you want to fund going forward. It's a better conversation if everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, because everyone, that's why Finance Week is so important, because what we want to do is really spotlight that we're all at different places in finance. Some of us, we might have contracts, property, we might have investments, we might have some of that. Some of us just have absolutely nothing, and we're an operating service delivery kind of model, so we don't kind of have to worry about that. So what we try to do over the week is provide a bit of resources and different things that people can at least access, and that pertains to their kind of organisational group. Jadene, I know that you're here kind of on behalf of Barry. So Barry Baker had his first article from Grant Thornton. He's got a great article around just using traffic light systems, very simple concept, but it's like green, orange, red. If you haven't seen it, it's on our website at the moment. It was day one of Finance Week. But that was designed to really just sit a really good snapshot in time. So when you get a board report or your finance team might present something, is to really get it into plain English. Like, yes, you can have your performance report, your profit and loss, or some kind of reporting that gets presented, but it's a really good place to say, we've had this amount of money go out, we've had this amount come in, we've got these kind of issues or whatever. But it is really important to get it into easy language so that everyone can understand it, and also try and use that kind of visual read the traffic light system, just so you can spot, like, okay, where are the risks? Is it our grants? Is it our reduction in donations? We've had significant reductions in donations or something. Or is it, I think, is it going to be compliance coming? So with the charities, what does that mean? And that's all. I think there's a comment here from Marie. So yeah, potentially getting ourselves ready for that change, or if there's going to be tax on revenue and income. So have you got some thoughts on that article and just some tips around the reporting? So if we can move into kind of reporting and what we see and questions that we can ask of our finance or treasurer.
Yep. So our common comments that we make about reporting is that there's definitely, you see some good reporting, you see some bad reporting. Bad reporting, I would call it, would commonly be very much full of, the accounting words that just don't make any sense to anybody that's not an accountant. So The reports do, as you say, Rose, need to be in a format that can be understood by a person that's not absolutely in a spreadsheet day in, day out. The reports, good commentary, which commonly starts from comparing the actuals to your budgeted financial figures, tell a story. They explain what the actual has happened, what you expected in your budget, what action may need to be taken from it, or what that variance or difference may actually mean. Sometimes you'll see like a lot of comments that are noise rather than signals. The signals are what you actually are trying to highlight to the readers of those reports. What is a risk? What do we need to do about it? Or what are we currently doing about it? Those traffic lights really that are make it super easy for those readers to just sort of hone in on the points that are red flag alert, something needs to happen here. And a lot of questions that are quite good to start with when it comes to reading these reports or evaluating whether the financial reports that your board are getting are just about, you know, is this report reflecting what I am actually seeing in the real world? Is it saying that our insurance expenses are reducing, but I know that in the real world, our insurances just go up and up and up? Is this realistic based on what I know? Do those explanations and the commentary that I was talking about before make sense? Does it fit with what you know about the organization? Do you have information in those reports to help you make the decisions that you need to for the organization? Cash flow and the liquidity of your organization. Do you have the money that you need to make bills and to make payments in the short to longer term? And then a last little thought is, can I see the connection between these financials and the bigger picture, our organization strategy? What are we going to be doing next? So there's many, many questions, but I would just finish off by saying that no question is a bad question when you're a board member and it comes to finances. If you're asking a question and the person that's answering that is sort of treating you like it's a silly question or they're getting snippy with you, I think that says that their explanation hasn't really hit the mark. And going back to the point that we've been making before, it's your responsibility along with the other board members. And so you need to feel comfortable that you understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's great comment. So it is around that risk matrix. So I think we could do a little bit more, I think, with our board meetings, and it's just to really take it to often what you see is you get the financial report and everyone's like, yes, any questions? Someone's got 1, 2, and then that's it. But perhaps we need to move in, especially in this time where we're talking about economic crisis, global crisis, things like that, then setting out board time in with the management to get into the risk management. What can we do? Is it the risk is the funding, the risk is the staff, the overheads of operating. What else can we do in this space? So breaking it down into tangible parts every month or every 2 months at your meeting, rather than just taking it as a financial report and take it as a given. Because I think that's where we get into a bit of trouble, because if we're waiting yearly, that's too long. If some of us are really under duress, that's way too long. So, and you know, as Greg was saying, like Rachel, it's everyone's responsibility when you decide to sit and have a seat at the board table. It's all our responsibility with finances. So we're all responsible. So I was just wondering if anyone, it sounds like everyone online is pretty much sus because there's no questions. So I'm thinking everyone's pretty happy. Or if they're not, just feel free to put some questions in, because I'd love to hear what you might need or your kind of thoughts as well. Some risk management. Is there some things, Greg, that you see through BNZ, even in management, that you would think could apply, like you serve on not-for-profit boards? Any thoughts in that space?
Well, I think risk management is important for, you know, if you have your work plan for the year in terms of the organisation, it's a really nice way to plan out when you're looking at it. And then if you look at it on an annual basis, you'll have put aside an allocated time either in each meeting or every second meeting or regularly enough that you can check your risk management. I think that's a really useful position to start, because then you can look at what that looks like in terms of your reporting. I think, as Jadene said, it really starts, the most important board meeting for us is budget, because we look at the budget and we go, okay, here's how much money we think we've got, and here's what we're going to do with it. And if everyone's on board at that meeting and understands the link between what you're doing, then the rest of the year flows through, because that's kind of your starting point in terms of how you look at finances, and from a risk management perspective, anything that comes out of that, you can kind of come back to where you start from that piece. So I think Jadene's really on the money on terms of that one. I think you can get reviews done in terms of your banking around to make sure that's right. As Rachel said at the start, you can get your banker in just to do a transactional review to make sure it's all set up correctly, because you've got traditionally transactional accounts, investment accounts, and term deposits, and using those effectively is really important around that part. The other part I would suggest, and why I find is a good way of doing it, is having some upskilling for finances during the year as part of your work plan. And so by doing that, you'll have allocated some time where everyone can upskill at the same time and have that as an educational piece, because a lot of boards are made up with people with different levels of governance experience. And so it's building that capability of the whole board helps with that side of it. But I do like the traffic light system for risks. I think it's a lovely way of doing it, because not all risks are the same, and that allows you to or look at it and go, okay, what's the focus? You know, we've got so much time. Which ones do we need to spend more time on? And if you're in a not-for-profit where there is more funding pressure, you spend more time on that piece. If it's something else, if it's a cyber risk, you can spend more time, allocating your time on that traffic light system. It's certainly a useful tool that we see with some of our not-for-profits.
Community governance has got a great traffic light risk management matrix on its website. Just shout out to Rose and the team there, which is really useful for not-for-profits to have a look at. We use something very similar on the trust board I sit on at Life Education Trust, and it's a really, really easy way to see immediately what you need to spend time on, which is great. The other thing I would say, just to add to Greg, I mean, when you first come onto a board, and then regularly from then on, I've got a new director coming onto a trust board that we serve, and our finance team is going to be sitting down with her, 2-hour session to run through everything in minute detail. That is also offered up to every other member on the trust board at the same time, in order to induct that trustee, but also to offer that reskilling, upskilling to current trustees as well. So, even just when you're joining a board, to have that one-on-one time with anyone who is in charge of your finances is really valuable as a start to understand what the reporting looks like, and ask the silly questions you might not want to ask in a full board meeting as you start off with. But then, as Jadene said, exactly right, as a director or a trustee, there is no silly question. If you don't understand, somebody has to help you understand, and that's up to them to help you fulfill your obligations. So that's really important.
I think that's really important too, is to ask around. We have so many wonderful people out in our community who have been on several boards. I think sometimes just expanding your networks a little bit and asking someone you might consider trustworthy and who's been on many boards, and just ask them if you're struggling with the lingo and the financial terminology and all that kind of thing. Like, don't just sit on this, just go see if you can find someone and take them through what your concerns are. Because I think the quicker that you upskill and be confident, and this is some of the articles that were shared this year, Finance Week, the better that you're going to serve your organisation. So if you're just kind of floundering, I would just say, just really address it. See if you can find someone out there who can help you and help explain some of those terminologies, because it is very lingo, is many things like that. So, but I think that's really great advice, Rachel, is to see if we can get someone to help.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions that are coming through about training for boards, sort of like as a general for all board members at the same time. And the Institute of Directors has been suggested. There is a comment that those can be kind of expensive. So a slightly more cost-friendly option could be, I've done a couple of sessions through my work where we've just gone to go talk to a board, and we've spent an hour and a half with them just covering off a few points that we think are quite important for a board member, and then just allowing for some space for people to ask those questions that they may not feel comfortable asking to the finance manager of the organisation, or just have never really thought of until that point, as well as the other online resources that we've all been talking about. So there's a few different ways you can do it. I think a couple of them that we've helped, they asked their auditor as a starting point of, hey, do you know someone that can help us out with this? And or that they might have a normal relationship where they're in touch every so often throughout the year with their accountant. They can ask that accountant, hey, could you come in and just run this with us?
We have a lucky situation on one of the boards that I'm on, where there's a local accountant who wants one of their staff members to get some governance experience, and they are also a learning accountant. And so they asked us, would they mind if that person came along to sit with us and sort of see what we do from a governance perspective. And as a kind of quid pro quo, that person could help us understand our finances. And so that was a mutual benefit kind of exchange, if you will, of skills and services. No money changed hands, but it was really helpful to our current board members. Also too, dare I say it, from a succession planning point of view, it certainly gives others a little bit of a view into what you do as an organisation, and create some interest and exposure of what you do to either younger people or people of different skill sets who might be interested in coming onto your board at a later date. So that worked out really well for a trust board that I sit on. And again, sometimes it's a case of every conversation you have, make it your mission to ask how people do things. It's surprising how many people have other contacts or knowledge themselves who are more than happy to introduce you to people that they know or have had similar experiences to you. You don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, and I think just on the training, watch the space, because community governance, we are bringing on some online training modules soon. One part will be finance, so that's very exciting, but I'll just park it there for a little bit, but that will help. Again, I think that's what's important, like Finance Week, it's flagship event, it's free, it's content, it's great thought leadership and support from like those here. So Grant Thornton, BNZ, Trust Management, that we can lean in on, because a lot of this, we can try things that are free. We can access good content resources. We also have that resource hub, so you can search for relevant information and articles. I just want to touch on a few things though, is that what we find is that whilst there's the reporting part, there's being a good governor is really important, is asking good questions. So it's those questions that are equally just as important to dig into what's really going on. A lot of times it's based on a bit of experience, but it's also knowing what to ask. So have you got any thoughts about questions? So really good questions to ask of the management team, so that we can kind of get a really good snapshot or picture. Have you got some examples you might like to share?
I can.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, sorry. How are we going against budget? Is always a good open-ended question, which will elicit sometimes a lot of information or not very much at all. And then you can gauge your reaction and your response from there. What's our cash flow projections looking like? Currently, where do we stand, and what does it look like going forward? What financial risks are we monitoring at the moment? Are we seeing any risks to our funding inflows? What's happening with our expense management at the moment? What kind of costs have we got going out of the business? If we've got reserves, how are our reserves performing? If it's in an investment portfolio, for example, are our returns going well or are they not? And how does that then impact on our funds flow and therefore what we can do or not do as an organisation? Do we owe anyone any money and why? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, I think that's a really great questions. And depending on whether you're a charity or you've got charitable status, I think looking at towards the end of financial years, whether you need to reforecast or not, because if you're in an organisation where you pay tax on surpluses at the end of the year, you may want to look at what you do with the remainder of your funds for the year. So if you are that type of entity where you're not charitable status and you retain profits or surpluses, looking at having that as part of your annual plan as well. So you've got a period of time where you've got some discussion around what other initiatives you can put in place for the rest of the year if you're ahead of budget or you haven't used all your funds for that year. Is a really good one to do. I think in terms of other questions, sometimes there's projects which go on for a period of time, and it's good to break them down into smaller, easier to understand parts. And so if it's a longer term project, just looking at it across annually is a nice, easy way for people to understand as well. If it goes over multiple periods of time, it's good to understand that. And then does it match your contract? So if you are in a position where you've got multiple year contracts on delivering things, just breaking it down and making sure you're measuring against those annual periods is a good idea. And where there are variances, having a really good understanding. But I think part of that is how it's reported. So making it really easy to understand for both the management and the board to understand the financials and what's going on with that makes it the questions much easier and the decisions to make on what's happening much easier from that side.
Just to add on to the budgeting forecasting kind of questions that we've been discussing is just, and it's mentioned by my colleague Rachel Dean in the comments, thanks Rachel, that with the budget assumptions, it's really important to understand what assumptions are behind your budget, because then if you get a report later on in the year that shows, oh, we're so ahead of budget in this area, if you understand what the assumption was and then you understand why you're not hitting that assumption, it can help you with those future decisions, as Greg was talking about earlier. If you don't understand that your organization expected that you'd have these expenses in the month, you would think, oh, woohoo, we've got this amazing result to budget. We didn't spend these expenses like we thought we were going to. Let's go and spend them somewhere else. But sometimes timing of expenses comes into the equation as well, and you can get yourself into trouble if you're not really understanding quite where the timing and the assumptions and the actuals all flow in together. So cool.
Yeah, some good things about asking good questions. And I think it's also having a look at obviously the vision, the purpose, mission, the direction of travel that you're taking. So if we push it out from the yearly budgets, what happens in 5 years' time? What's going to happen in 10 years' time? Are we still going to be serving communities that were there? Are we trying to overtake the world and moving quickly, or are we losing some of the key things about what we've been doing? So it's possibly, can you replicate what you can achieve in a year? And can you do that for 10 years? Like, just thinking about good questions. Is it so hard that you can't get the money in and you're not able to sustain the organisation? Then that probably tells you that you need to think about something differently. So that's not sustainable, because often we are very reliant on peaks and flows of grants coming in or out, or donations or services or things that we're charging. And so it is trying to really stay ahead of the game, and that's our role as a governance board member, is to future think and future position organisations for success. So I would probably stress a little bit to stay out of the day-to-day and the month-to-month or yearly, and then take it to the next level and think, okay, can we actually survive for a long term? Are we in that sustainable position, like Rachel was saying. But are some of the things that we're delivering, are they actually sustainable? Are they fitting the mark? We've got a couple of case studies that we developed quite some time ago. I'd be keen if anyone's got other case studies or examples similar to this. But we wrote some case studies about an organisation, 2 health organisations that amalgamated. They amalgamated because they were essentially competing for the same contracts at a management level, and it wasn't sustainable. So there was 2 separate entities, they both had CEOs, they both had boards, and then in the end they merged. One of the CEO became the CEO, one became the deputy. So you can imagine all the different things coming out of that, and then a new board was set up. So it's also trying to think about the future and innovation and what else can we do. I'm not saying that we need to go out and that's going to be the next thing that you need to do, but potentially it's at different levels. Can we start to think about other not-for-profits that have operations or offices and shared spaces? Can we think a bit more with innovation in mind to grow and sustain our organisation? So I just want to share a little bit about that in there too, around the future kind of thinking. And have we got any other? And the questions. So talking about innovation, we've got a few AI questions. Sounds like I like the comment about solving the tariff. So that sounds, calculating that sounds like an awesome idea. AI, who's used? I have actually used it in Excel pretty well, but who's been using any tools? Rachel?
Yes, no, I have. Notebook LLM on Google is quite fun. ChatGPT is quite fun. I think some people use Claude as well. You've got to treat it as a bit of an intern, someone there to help you, but someone who sometimes doesn't really know what they're doing a bit. So you've got to test them a wee bit. But in terms of, asking the right questions and putting some information in, it can provide you some quite interesting responses to really test your own mind. All I would say, big caveat, is don't put anything sensitive into open source generative AI or any other tools like that. That's not good from a privacy perspective for many good reasons. But look, it's something that is developing, and today's AI will only be the worst, and tomorrow's will be better. It's fascinating in terms of asking it questions and frameworks that it will come back to, and the more questions that you ask, the better answers that you end up getting. Yes, you can put financials into it and ask for an analysis. It doesn't always get it right, but it can provide some interesting questions. It can even provide you the questions that you might like to think about asking as well. So there is that ability to do that. You can't avoid the need to turn your own mind on, though. And so I think it's really, really important that you remember that this will not do your work for you. And so you must take that ownership of understanding what's coming at you. But it can be a great first go at something to sort of set a framework up for you to think about and to go away with. It is quite fun. Treat it as fun and not scary, and that's the way that you'll interact with it the best, I think. ChatGPT is certainly quite good fun, and if you get it onto the audio function, you can have some quite interesting conversations with a cup of tea, and it's like talking to somebody. It's quite something. So I would encourage you to have a go. It's don't be scared, but also don't quite trust it either.
Yeah, I'd just add to, I totally agree with everything Rachel said. You've used AI a bit more than I have. I've stuck to Copilot and ChatGPT myself mainly, but the treating it like a clever intern is sort of how we describe it here as well. And I know that Copilot's really good at linking the sources that it pulls the information from. So I do like to dig into those links just to sort of sense check what's coming out. Remembering, that you don't want to be putting sensitive information in there. And yes, again, sense checking what comes back out and understanding, does this make sense with what I know? There are a few kind of other ways that AI is built into other tools that you might be a little bit more sort of used to. Like I know that Xero has some AI capability, which a lot of not-for-profits will probably be using, and that can be helpful for giving you a starting point when it comes to sort of cash flow forecasting and that kind of thing. But again, don't take it as gospel. You know, at the end of the day, what's going to be happening in the future with your organization a lot better than Xero does. It's just using past performance as a predictor of what it thinks is going to happen next. So proceed with caution, but have fun with it.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And there's been lots of sessions on how to use AI over the past year or two, and people becoming more familiar with it. And I think it started as there's risks and now it's opportunities, which is great. I agree. It's like having someone who's new to the business and they're learning, and next year they'll be better. The year after that, they'll be better. The information will be better. It's great that people are using it more for things. I think it's really useful where you've got a task that is a time-consuming task, and it speeds that piece up. So from a task orientation piece, it's really useful around that part for where it works. But the better your questions are, the more engaged are. And I think we're learning how to ask better questions as well in that environment. So I think that's useful from the old Google searches to having those conversations and getting more information around it. Yeah, absolutely. One point that was interesting, I went to a presentation last year on AI, and they talked about the contracts that people sign with it and reselling or allowing that information to be used for other language models. And so not many people read. Rachael probably reads them as a lawyer in terms of the entire contract. But if you've got a contract, there may well be something in there about what happens to your data and whether it gets sold as part of that organisation going forward. So something to watch out for from that side as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, those are good points about innovation. There's quite a few comments about AI technology, and that is going to play a part in how we operate our organisations. I like what you said, Rachael, about basically don't turn our brains off, because it is around asking those questions. So again, it's what we think is of concern and what's the risk to the organisation, but also trying to future-proof our organisations means that we've got to just keep going if we're not getting the answers that we need. And Jadene shared a bit about that as well. Have we got any last questions? A few coming in still. I think one of the things about using all these tools is it is really important to make sure about privacy and things like that. So yeah, getting a trusted system that we can. And Xero does use, I think, AI across its software as well, which is a common platform that people use for run our accounts. So thinking about where we started from at the start of this board talk is a bit about the situation that we're in at the moment, and thinking about global impacts and potentially the rise in tariffs and economic environment continuing, and the cost of living crisis, and everything so costly to deliver and serve and pay for, and everyone knows what it's like at the moment. Is there any innovative ideas or solutions or things that you would like to share as we wrap for those on the call today, just around future-proofing our organisations? Like, what can we really do in this point of time that's really practical and something we can take to our next board meeting and say, yes, we've really got to think about this? Rachael?
Jump in there first. Look, I think first and foremost, it's having a really deep understanding of what your purpose and your mission is, first and foremost, and how do you ensure that resilience of your organisation. And sometimes it comes down to just basic administrative hygiene, keeping good documents, keeping good records, keeping them in one place, having someone responsible for them. First and foremost, get the basics right. Second of all, that financial management is key. Let's face it, without funding, without money, we can't do anything in the sector, broadly speaking. yes, there's lots of great volunteers and lots of good things we can do, but a lot of things do come back to having the funding to do some of the things, at least, that we do. So it is that financial management. The other thing I would say is really spend the time with your board, with your management if you have any, and really invest in that leadership development through the board and through your management, because it is people who are leading all of these things and doing all of these things. And I keep sort of referring to it's teamwork that makes the dream work. You all need to be aware of responsibilities and obligations together as a team. So you need to foster really good relationships there. And then lastly, it's about, coming back and sharing your experiences into the board, into management, so that you can bring all of that collective experience to be asking the right questions, to be really focusing on your purpose and your mission accordingly. So all of those sorts of things, but start with the basics, because from there you can only build.
Good points. The other things I'd say that might be helpful for people is talk to other people on other boards. Right, not all boards do things the same way, and some are set up really well and have got great plans and processes in place. They've got great governance manuals in place, and that works efficiently and well, and they achieve what their mission is, which is great. Other people are getting towards that. I think other organizations can be really generous in terms of their time, and this is a great forum to be able to share thoughts and insights on how to make it easier. So, congratulations, Rose, and the community governance officer. I think it's fantastic to be able to have these forums for it, because it's really useful. The other one I think that's interesting is it's okay to ask for help from independent advisors, or bring people into as guests at board meetings, because especially if you're looking at a future focus and you want to, see what the world looks like in 4 years, there's people that are really good at that are really helpful for your organization and might well be able to add something to your discussions and your knowledge as a board when you're making your decisions around your strategy going forward. So having some time allocated in your work plan around bringing in other people to talk to the board is a really useful way as well of sort of broadening out the skills that you're looking at.
I mean, I'm an accountant by trade, so I'm not really imaginative, but so I don't have any really great and out there suggestions. But I did notice one of the questions in the chat, and I just thought this would be a really good one to jump on to finish off for me, was about knowing about your future-proofing your plans if you might not have the funds to carry on your activities. So sort of, I imagine a few not-for-profits will be sitting there at the moment thinking, what's next for us? There's the purpose, the vision that Rachel's discussed, but I guess if you're not sure if you have enough funds to keep the doors open, that may kind of overwhelm you a little bit. So that goes back to the budgeting and reporting stuff that we were talking about before. If you understand what your commitments and your expenses are and what you can drop and what you need to continue to keep doing, that will help you to inform when you need to make decisions about your activities and what you may need to say, cool, we need to shut the door on that one, or we need a new funding source to be able to continue this, etc. And that will just really help you make sure that you're making decisions before things become a burning platform, and that you're not continuing to carry on with an activity because you've always done it when it's actually potentially hurting other areas of your organization.
Yeah, that's great advice, and thank you for recognising that. Yeah, it's very stressful times out there for many organisations who are doing fantastic work. It's getting hard. Someone just mentioned even about trying to find volunteers, so even that's becoming difficult. I like that idea about Greg, about asking someone to come in who's got some expertise and have a chat to the board, have a bit of coaching. People really love giving their time. They're very open to doing that, and just giving someone an opportunity too to come speak to your board or find out from others. I think that's where we can learn a lot. So I take that on board too, because I think that's another probably great space to facilitate those conversations for community governance as well. Yeah, and just on what you're saying, Jadene, I do like that, like shut the door on some things and then open the door to others. So we've got to start being really innovative. If we're struggling, we've got to look for different ideas. And that's not just on us individually, it's around the whole board getting together, whole management team, really knuckle this out, because if you're under a lot of stress and strife at the moment, you've got to really dig in at the moment, the best that you can to carry on and get through it. So on the courses, we are looking at bringing some, we're working on a partnership at the moment. I'm not going to say it's going to turn up in June, but I'm aiming for June, July. So watch this space, and it's a fantastic range of online governance courses coming. So it's been a long time coming because we don't actually have those. So it's going to be very exciting times for us. I do want to thank these three lovely people, because behind them, they have sponsored Finance Week. So mai te paki for our panel guests. So Greg, BNZ, Rachael, Trust Management, Jadene, Barry, Grant Thornton. Again, these are fabulous people giving their time for free, our thought leadership to our sector. So we couldn't do this without having fabulous people like this join us for board talks, giving us articles, resources and insights. So, and to the team in April behind community governance and all of those supporting us. Thank you for being with us for board talks. It's a wonderful community. Love seeing you every couple of months, and we'll be sharing this out. So have a fantastic weekend. Board talks was brought to you early, so enjoy your Easter school holidays break. Mā te wā, and take care till next time.
Mā te wā.
Thank you, dear.
Thanks,
Thank
Rose.
you, everyone. Thanks so much.
Rose.